Everybody. Let me get this off my screen here. Okay. First of all, I did want to thank Carolyn for last week. I was so disappointed that I couldn't be on the call after I listened to it because our paths are very alike as far as saying yes. And I suppose a lot of people's are, but I really identified it and was like, oh, I wish I could have said something. I wish I could have been part of that because I really enjoyed it. And so there's been the only part that I haven't gotten to yet is when she said she fell in love with painting. That has not happened to me yet. I'm trusting that one of these days there'll be an aha in my spirit. And because I know I've had that supernatural experience with God, so it's got to transfer over into the physical world one of these days. But it's still a lot of frustration for me. But as I looked through my belief book, I thought, I usually do childlike drawings, which I'll show you some of them, but they made my heart happy. So I will say that. And so I think I've mentioned it before, but that whole thing about saying yes is so important, when we're doing belief books, really, or in any time in our lives, because I look at yes as a bridge to get us from where we are to where we want to go, or where God is calling us to go. So, and I know I've mentioned it before, but one of the transformational books was Shonda Rhimes's book, A Year of Yes. And, she's the, the producer of Grey's Anatomy and other lots of television stories and stuff. But I was just flabbergasted that some of the things that she was reluctant to say yes to, because you look at a powerful woman, you think, wow, they've done this a lot, but it absolutely transformed her life. And so that was very inspirational. So I recommend that book to anybody, A Year of Yes. Yeah, so thanks, Carolyn. I appreciate that. And so that I just want to give you one example too, not from my life, but I have a nurse that comes to stay with my mother. And she said the first time that she had to take care of somebody who had passed away, she was really anxious and, all of that. She didn't really like it, but it's part of nursing. And so she went to her nursing director and she said, I want you to give me everybody who's passed away for me to take care of, because she wanted to get to the place where she could do that without all of that, intimidation. And so really that's no different than what we're doing. So we're asking God to put us in situations where we're inoculated to our limiting beliefs and grow into who God says we are. So when she told me that story, I thought that was pretty spiritual, actually. Yeah. So anyway, that leads me to, I wanted to start with John Hoff's post, because when Lynn asked me to share about belief books, I thought his post was really key. And he said, who you see yourself as can either build you up or keep you from ever realizing who you were meant to be. Knowing your identity is not only important for you, it is for the rest of us as well. What you were created to offer the world is important to the world. And so as I read that, I thought back to a worship time where I was seeing the face of Jesus made up of all little faces of you and faces of me. And, you had to zoom in to see that. But when you zoom in, if there's spaces where people aren't showing up in their truest identity, it doesn't give a clear picture of who Jesus is. And so I feel like that's what belief books are all about. It's allowing us to show up so that Jesus has a representation on earth that people are encouraged by, and they can then further their own process. So I loved what he said, because it's not just about us. We have to show up in our truest identity for the world to be changed. So and also, just to tag on there, what he said to me at the time was, that's why murder is so anathema to God, because it removes his image from the earth. It removes his image from the big picture. So we don't get a complete picture of who he really wants to be. Working in belief books is, I think, a wonderful way to expose limiting beliefs and replace them with what God thinks. And what I love about belief books is that they're designed, in my view, to lead us into an experience. And they go right past head knowledge and into an encounter. And when we have an encounter, it changes everything. It has the power to change everything. And then, like I said, we can more accurately portray Christ for others. So Lynn wrote, as children, we are in a constant state of creating. We create our beliefs out of our experiences, thoughts, feelings, actions, and the beliefs of others before we have any critical thinking skills of our own. And I wanted to ask, did anyone have an eye-opening experience when they did the first question? Did anybody do the first question that she proposed? And what was it was about what was a significant disappointment that I endured in childhood, and what did I make of it? What did I make it mean about who God is? Did anybody choose to do that question? Nobody chose to do that question. Well, I looked back in my belief book, as this will be the second time that I've done that particular thing, but I didn't look back until I had answered the question. So I just share mine. I went with the first thing that came to me, and that was when I was a little girl. My father brought home a surprise, and he really never did that, but it was a box of those push-up ice creams, and I think it was the orange creamsicle kind. So I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever, you know? And so I had mine, and fast forward to sometime in the future, my father came home and, you know, he said he had a surprise. Only my dad was, you know, he liked to do practical jokes once in a while. And so it wasn't something like that. It was, I don't even really remember what it was. All I remember is the emotion attached to it, that I felt betrayed. I felt, you know, I cried. It wasn't fair. It wasn't nice. You know what I mean? I was devastated. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's why I don't like surprises. I do not like surprises. I was given a surprise baby shower with one of my children, and I was told that I was going to go out for coffee and dessert with a certain couple, so we had to go over their house and pick them up. So I walk in, and there's this baby shower for me, and I was mad. I had to not show it, but I was like, what are you talking about? I want my dessert. I don't want to be here, the center of attention, and you lied to me. It's like, I was so upset inside, but I had to act like I was happy. I don't like surprises. I really don't. And I think it stems from that, you know, so that was a revelation to me, the connection of the two, why I don't like surprises. So belief books can really, when we do the work of them, can, you know, unearth those subconscious beliefs that have shaped our lives. And so I know that, the second week is taking care of replacing those beliefs. So I'll be working on that with God this week. What does God say about surprises? And because he's always surprising us, and kind of don't mind usually when he does. Anybody have any thoughts or anything they want to share? Because I really like the way Carolyn had conversation, and maybe she asked better questions than I do, but I do want to give opportunity for anybody to.
No, I'm glad you did, Victoria. I'd like to, I guess I'll just jump in real quick, because when I saw you, now that you're, you did the popsicle, the black drawing.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So I appreciate the story, because I looked at it, I'm like, well, what is this going to be? And I didn't put it together until just now when you said it, because like, I don't know you, so I don't recognize the faces yet in like people in the group yet. So I appreciate that. Was interesting, and that it made me think back of the first time I had one of those popsicles, and it is a joyful thing. It is like, it's a wow kind of, and I don't know, it's this whole group already. I've been in the meeting 10 minutes and I'm like, wow. So, in terms of how as a child, the emotions translate to artistic expression, or can, and probably would if a kid was, sitting there with some drawing paper when some of these things happen, or I don't know, it's just interesting. Definitely makes my mind think differently, which I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, that's why I said it wasn't really an analog per se, because it's supposed to be non-representational, but I just felt led to, like, I gotta put this down there. So it's for me, so I can break the rules and do whatever I want. Yeah, so let's see here. What else did I have to say? I also really like some of the things that Lance Wallnau says, because he is, there's parts of his ministry that tracks with Lynn and what we're doing. And one of the things that I wrote down one time was, if you don't recalibrate your identity statement to who I am now, your own brain can conspire against you to remain the person you were rather than the person you're called to be. And so that's what beliefs books also help us do. They help us to recalibrate who we are. And they're an identity statement, really, a developing identity statement in picture form. Or one of the mistakes I think I made with mine that I'm correcting now is I only put the pictures in there. So sometimes I forget the whole story. My whole story is in my journal. It's a different thing. So I'm going to photocopy those and put them behind the pictures so I can have more of the detail. I mean, it brings back the memory, but not all the details of what God said to me. So that's one thing I would say, Desiree, if you're just starting out and that speaks to you, put as much content in there as you want to have, just because I just thought, oh, we're just I have sometimes my brain, I have a limited way of thinking, oh, we're just supposed to do pictures, but I'm going to photocopy the pages and put them in there. And so he also said, you need to be in the company of people who see you in the bigger game and a bigger role that you're in, and hold you to accountability to pull that out of you, because who you are now, no. So I feel like that's what this group is. This is that larger group that helps each one of us pull out of us that larger identity. And it isn't even sometimes overt, it's just kind of like sometimes even an underground thing, as we're in this group and we see other people becoming who God called them to be in a greater measure, it encourages us, you know, and there's so many things that are either parallel or we can relate to. You know, this is that for me, you know, this is what they're saying, but this is this area for me, you know, and I'm always encouraged by that when I am in one of the Zoom calls. And so the other thing he said was, who are you now that you've never been before? Who are you going to be that you've never been before? And who is God calling you to be that you've never been? And what is God calling you to do that you've never done? So those are the kind of things that we have to recalibrate to. And I think to encourage ourselves, we could answer that question, who are you now that you've never been before? Because there's been changes in all of us. So we need to, you know, not only look in our belief books, but maybe even for those of us who relate to writing, write down. You know, I did that exercise. I wrote down, who am I now that I wasn't 5 years ago? And that was very encouraging to myself, because there's been changes. And if we don't take the time to do that, we can feel like we're just stuck sometimes and that there hasn't been any change. So does anybody want to share anything about that? Like, as you look back over the last number of years that you've been in this group, you know, what would you say has been one thing that, you know, that you've increased your understanding of your identity? Anybody? What has your belief book done for you? Carolyn.
I think when you were saying that, it reminded me of something that I forgot to say last week, and that is, even before Lynn's class, I was reading the story of Joshua and Caleb, and I was so excited about it. I just, the brave, you know, they were going against the, you know, they were going with God against all the others, and they were standing up for what they believed. And I remember, and I don't know, and I've had people tell me the Holy Spirit doesn't talk like that, and he's always nice, and he's not to me. Sometimes he's not a gentleman to me, but you know, he speaks to us how we need to hear. And he said, you're not a Caleb. And I knew exactly what that meant. And that was that fear factor in my life. And so from that point on, just that awareness of, this is something that God has, you know, has showed me, and now I have to take responsibility for it. And I have to start walking toward courage and whatever that looks like, you know. And it's been a slow journey, but I think the belief books really help, because it's actually there in front of us. Like, this is my new belief book.
Awesome.
And I haven't unpacked all that yet, but you know, it's every new season, we can look back in that, we can look through that and say, like you're saying, what is it that this class is, you know, how are we different? And I can say that in so many ways, that I'll take on something, I'll take on a project, I'll go for it, where I would have just waited and waited and waited until I forgot about it in the old days, you know.
Yep.
But now I think, okay, you know, I can do that. I understand exactly what you're saying, you know. In fact, when we start opening ourselves up to what he's saying and how he's talking to us, we hear really quickly, like, I didn't do the disappointment thing, but as soon as you said that, he put in a disappointment and he told me what it was, you know. And now I get to choose what to do with that next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
tonight, you know.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share it? I mean, because we can
I
look.
will.
Go ahead.
Well, this morning I was considering signing up for something with Sean Bowles and then this other thing, a health thing, a thyroid thing. And it was like, Lord, I'm notorious for starting but not finishing, like we talked about last week. And so I was journaling and kind of made the list of all of my failures of how many times have I bought fabric and wanted to do projects and then I don't even get it out, you know. And as I'm starting to purge, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that skirt that I wanted to make. And anyway, but then it was like, well, what have I completed? And the Lord was like, well, you bought the plants and you put them in and they're not dead. And you're cleaning up and you did the belief book before, maybe not all of it, but you did a lot of it. And I'm being, you know, my intentionalness of my morning time of being in the Word every day and I'm not consistent yet, but I used to say that I'm consistently inconsistent, but now I can say that I am more consistent in things than I used to be. And so those are the recent changes of just in the last few months. Irene came over last week, I think, and it was last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday. And we were visiting, and we go to the same church, but don't really see each other very much or have time to visit. And so it was really nice to chat. And I said, have I changed? And she was like, man, the first time I saw you, you barely crawled into the church, and look at you now. And that was about 5 years ago. So, you know, a lot of times we live with our incremental changes and we don't recognize it because they're incremental. And that's where we need each other to aside from Holy Spirit saying, you know, you're getting really brave and you smile more and you're whatever it is, you know, just and recognizing the incrementals in somebody else is significant, and telling them that you see it is significant for you and for them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that I hope that goes with what you were asking.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because one of the things that Lance says, your family members aren't necessarily going to notice, or if they do notice a change, sometimes they're going to think that it's a put on or it's a show because they're not used to seeing you that way. So that's why we need like this group, or we need other people, because our family members aren't always going to, you know, it would be nice if they did, but not always going to notice.
Validate.
That's the word I want. Yeah. Right. So, yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to just talk about was this, I think it was Anne Lamott's quote, says, creativity is the art of producing something rare, original, and valuable, leading to the thought. So this led me to the thought that the most creative endeavor or undertaking that I will ever embark upon is becoming myself. And so, you know, we are creative beings, and we're in a process until we die of creating ourselves, in the sense of we're always receiving revelation from God about how he sees us. And so when I thought of it like that is one of the most creative undertakings that I will ever have the opportunity to do, is to create myself according to what who God says I am. It became more of, you know, an adventure. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that.
Can you read that quote again, please?
Creativity is the act of producing something rare, original, and valuable. That was her quote. And then I went on from there because it led me to thinking about, you know, our own process. It's a creative process. All of us are in a creative, we're living creative beings, creating ourselves as revelation comes. So I did want to share one concrete example of how, I mean, I felt like it was important to share one concrete example of how the belief book has changed my life. And I totally forgot about this one. It's not even a picture. I sent Sharon some pictures, and then I found this one hidden in the back of something in my belief book, but I don't know. So I don't know if you can see it. It's a dollar, it's a piece of money, and it's pink, and she's biting her nails. And so when I saw that, and it says, too hot to handle. So when we did a unit on finances or money, at one point, let's see here in my book, hang on one second. I think Lynn's challenge was to sit down with money and have a conversation. And so when I did that, that's what showed up. And she was female, and I thought she was flippant. You know, she's hot pink, and she's disinterestedly, you know, she's flashy, she's disinterestedly biting her nails, and I could see her, and I felt like she had no time for me. And she had this air of superiority. This was my perception. And disdain even. She had this superiority and disdain. And I heard the words, too hot to handle. She's too hot to handle. And then I heard the word wasteful. So, and I heard her say, I imagined her say, I don't like the way that you've been using me. You don't let me be free to have fun. And so when money first sat down, I thought she was arrogant and spoiled and full of disdain for me. And I would compare her to like a valley girl in hot pink dress and disinterestedly biting her nails. But then I think Lynn gave us the exercise to sit in the seat of money then. So I sat in her chair and I became her. And I saw that she was hurt. She was childlike. She had a childlike personality who wanted to be free to have fun, and I wouldn't let her. Even in giving, even as I give to people or give, there was a holding back and a reluctance to let her go and be her true self. And it was very revelatory. And so then there was something about balling up the picture and giving it to the person on our left or our right. And it happened to be my husband, who's very generous, and my mother on the other side, who's absolutely the opposite. And so the thing that the feeling that I had was, it's not okay. I believed at the time that it's not okay to have fun with money, even if it gives me great pleasure. So it's not okay. You know, like if I buy something for myself, then I used to feel guilty, you know, especially if it was like $100 or something. It's okay to buy little things, but if it was $100 or more, gee, you know, could have bought something much more worthwhile or for somebody else. Or so anyway, when it went along with that, I had a list of things that were limiting beliefs. And at the time, this was in August 2020, and it said it was in the pandemic, and so we thought we were going to lose our 401k, and so in that current situation, I had that fear. And I thought, and I just wrote down these limiting beliefs. One of them was, if I don't save my money, I won't have any for me. If I inherit any money, it won't be mine. I won't be able to make decisions about it, because my husband and I make decisions together about money. But if I inherit money, it was like, well, that's supposed to be my money. It came from my family. You know, I was like, that's how I was feeling about it at the time. And then I'm not worth a new car or a nice house or a yard. And I was embarrassed that we hadn't gotten rid of these junk cars that we had in our backyard, because my husband would buy Saabs and repair them. And then if he'd get another one. And so we had like 3 Saabs in our backyard. And I was like an embarrassment to me, you know, nobody could see them from the road, but it just, anytime somebody came over, I felt like, you know, this is going to sound very judgy, but I felt like white trash. That's how I felt. I did. And so, so then the next, so I was embarrassed, and I was embarrassed that our house hadn't been painted, because I felt like it needed painting. We did have the money to do it, but we weren't doing it. And then the 6th one was, I hold back on giving as much money to others as my husband wants to do. And then I feel, you know, because I feel cheated, and I want him to care for me first. There was this part that wanted him to care for me first. And I felt guilty writing that, because he has financed so many trips for me to go to places, to Israel, to different places. And it's like, so, you know, it's like my emotions were not connected to reality, to it, you know. So anyway, but since then, I made a conscious effort to try to do what the exercise was about, to live, I forget exactly the word Lynn used, but I did create a picture where finances are flowing through my heart and out to other people. So I've really made an effort to do that, and it's really changed some things. And the interesting thing is, when I looked at this list, I was flabbergasted, because I just got a new car. My husband just bought me a car. I mean, it's not brand new, but it's 2019 Highlander with only 40,000 miles on it. And I was like, that was new enough for me. And I do get to have a new house because of the flood, and the insurance paid for what we would normally not, we wouldn't have been able to afford everything that happened, because there was so much damage. The insurance paid for new carpeting throughout the house, new floors everywhere, new kitchen. Well, we did the new kitchen cabinets, but just so much stuff that the paint everywhere. It's like a new house. It's like a new house. So you have to leave room for God too, and for God to do what he wants to do in the way he wants to do it. So it was okay for me to want certain things, because my house did need certain things. I'm not just saying that. It really hadn't been painted in 15 years, you know, so it was pretty grungy. And so anyway, so just being in the process of all of that just made me realize how much I've changed, because I often will tell my husband now, when we decide what to give to somebody, we come up with a number, whatever, and mine is larger than his. So, you know, it's really helped me. I mean, so that's what's so great about belief books. I mean, it changes everything. It can change everything. And some things that are out of your control, God still controls them, and he can still give you the desire of your heart, you know. And I'm still dealing with a little bit of like, it feels selfish of me to say that to you, you know, but for whatever reason, God allowed that to happen, and it did work together for the good. So anybody, any input, and you don't have to talk about that, but anything anyone would want to share at all about?
I love that, Victoria. I love that your generosity got larger. You know, there's I think it's in Proverbs 18, 26, I believe, is the scripture where it talks about giving, you'll be refreshed, he who gives. But in the Message, it says the world of the generous gets larger and larger. And your world got larger.
Yes, yeah.
That
Yeah.
is so cool.
I don't have
I
that
love it.
sting like I used to. We give it and it's like, so, they're powerful. It's powerful to change your beliefs.
I-
Sitting down with money, that really changed me.
That's a really cool exercise. I look forward to maybe finding that, but I was gonna say, not related to the belief book, but maybe a belief book in faith, like that's what I was making without knowing it yet, because whatever the relationship with money is and all the false beliefs and all that stuff and tithing, etc., blah blah blah. So for years I too was too tight-fisted. I'm like, why? It really irritated me as to why. And then I just started to say, well, Lord, you're a giver, I'm a giver. And would listen to things, the various teachings and reading the scripture about generosity, etc. So he's just started helping me to do it with someone in my neighborhood, actually, who every time I went to the grocery store, I'd just buy groceries for them. One day I said, Lord, I'd really like to be able to just, what I get, they get, instead of me thinking, I can't afford it. So it just would increase. And it was such a blessing to them. And of course, it ended up blessing me more. But kind of the same thing happened in terms of desiring of my heart, because like our house is the age of it. And, people in the neighborhood are doing various upgrades and et cetera, and we can afford to do quite a few of the exterior ones. And so I had just laid it before the Lord. I got tired of looking at everybody's. I'm like, well, Lord, you're my dad and you're generous, so help, basically like that. And I wanted the siding replaced. So one day I remember it was like, it was a couple of weeks of me seeing the same house. I'm like, I really like that, Lord. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I'm believing for it. And then, so this is 2021. Yeah. September 2021, I had just gotten over the virus, and we had put a brand new door. We were able to put a new door in the front of the house, and it's in color I love and all that. And I got a knock on the door, and it was this young man selling replacement, aluminum siding. Well, not aluminum now, but whatever. And I'm like, I just stopped for a minute, and I was like, nah, I don't want to hear salesman. And then I just heard the Lord take another listen, and I did, and it ended up being in the research of it, hail damage is covered under our insurance. I got all new siding.
Awesome.
I know. And I thought, wow, okay. So there's my belief book in faith.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Now, I love that your conversation that, you saw your limiting beliefs in your conversation with money.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that that's so important. That's as we're doing this week, and our belief books are looking at, that's what our assignment is about, looking at the things that are, limiting. And yeah, I think the uncovering of those limitations and being just very real with yourself about it is so significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so great about imagination, because you can say that was all imaginary, but it was powerful to me, I saw it. So that's just how it was. So I don't know if anybody's interested in seeing a few of my pages, maybe just give you a little idea of what I do.
Yes, I want to see.
So I want to say right now, you can do whatever you want. I didn't know that at the beginning. So I think people said that, but I do watercolor. So that's all I've ever done is watercolor in my belief book. And I plan to continue that because I just want it. I like it. But so you can do collage, you can do just collecting pictures, you can do whatever you want. It's individual, but mine just happens to be watercolor. So yeah, so if you want to put the first one up, Sharon, we can just go in order. I'll just go through them real quick. Oh, I gotta go to my friends though, because I. So while she's looking for that first one, it's about imagination. This is my imagination. And so that's how I portrayed her, as a little girl and mischievous. And, you know, it looks to me like she doesn't really, you never know what she's going to do. So that's my imagination. I had something I wanted to say about imagination, but if I can find it now. Because I have these two notebooks. I spent so much time in there. It's like, it doesn't look like I did, but I have so many bookmarks. That's the problem. I can't find what I wanted to say about imagination. Well, anyway, we'll just go on. That is, oh, here it is. I was thinking about Jesus, because he became as we are. You know, he had an imagination. And I think, you know, I like to think that Jesus imagined a scenario when he came to earth. You know, he came to earth, he imagined a scenario, and then he came to act it out so that it could be manifest on earth. And we are the sons or the children of God. So can we not do the same? Can we not imagine a scenario and then allow God to use us to cause that to manifest? And what is it that needs someone to imagine it? Can we imaginate solutions to problems or the ills of the world? Can we imagine a thing of beauty so grand that it will call people to worship? Can we imagine spoken word or poetry or avant-garde art that will speak a message of revelation or hope? Can creativity speak and break the bonds of slavery? Imagination is an incubator. It's where something is conceived, but still needs a growth chamber. But at some point, many things imagined need an action to cause them to manifest. Jesus was a catalyst for imagination, to have a landing place and a vehicle to become. So we're also the vehicles and the hinge that is needed to take action for a God idea to become in this realm. So just some thoughts about imagination and Jesus. So that's my imagination right there. And if you just want to go through them kind of quick, that's all I was going to say about that one. Oh, this one is, that's my depiction of going through different doors of revelation. I have some stuff written about it in my journal, but I didn't go look it up. But there was a spark of revelation you can see, and it draws me into, and it's never just one door. It's door after door after door. If you pursue the spark of revelation, it's always a greater and greater pathway. So that was my depiction of that. And this one, God woke me up one day and he said, I'd like to see her fly a little, knowing that she belongs there. So this is my depiction of that. This is my little girl self, ready to take off with her wings. And it's funny because, you know, I didn't realize I had so many pictures of a little redheaded girl in my belief book until I was doing this today. So there's a lot of little girls with red hair. So it's healing whatever that little girl person of me that needed to be healed, the belief book. So there's that one. She's ready to fly. What was next? Okay, that one is, this is me in a garden under the arbor with the words to the love of God. That's one of a very meaningful song to me. So it's like God is singing over me, the love of God, so rich and pure, so measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure, the saints and angels song. So that was something God spoke to me. And so that's depicting that. This one, was a real revelation to me too. This is Father Time, and he's holding my hand because I had all these things about, I don't have enough time, you know, time is slipping away and all that. And God showed me time as a benevolent father, and he's going to take me where he wants me to go. He's going to hold my hand, and there is enough time to do the things that he's called me to do. So that healed that part of me that was like, I don't have time. No, I make excuses, but I do have time, and he's benevolent. He's not a taskmaster. I don't have like, you know, a deadline over me, and he's a benevolent father. So, and he has his little tattoo with my initial on his arm. So that was that. This one was, there was that song, I was listening to a song with words, so take me back to the beginning when I was young, running through the fields with you. I forget who does it. That's just part of the chorus. So I saw myself as this little butterfly in Jesus's hands, and he let it go. And it became this little girl running in the field with wings on, and she's looking back over her shoulders saying to Jesus, come on, you know? So that totally changed my view of, you know, that I am that playful inside, and I can say to Jesus, come on, let's go. I don't have to wait for him to say, come on, Victoria. You know, it's like he's delighted to watch me run through the field, and he's delighted to come with me. So that was that one. I think there's just like two more, right? Oh, this was also the time when I made more than one image for that one. And I've got all the time in the world to do everything God has for me to do, and I can trust him with the rest. So he showed me that time can be fractured. It can be fractured to allow me to do, you know, an acceleration or whatever. It's so that was depicting time. I have all the time in the world to do everything God's called me to do. And maybe, is there one more? Oh, this is my cover. And I didn't know how to start my belief book. And the Lord said, start with your tattoo. So when I was 65, I got a tattoo, thought I'd never do that, but my son designed it, and it's a long story, so I won't go into it, but it's, you know, it's on my arm here, and it's depicts this art journey, because I didn't do anything in art until I was 62. I told my son I'm not creative. Anyway, started painting, found out I could do something I didn't know I could do. So he designed this for me, and so I started with that. And then the upper right corner is a matchbook, because I have a lot of prophetic words about being a fire starter. And that was even before I did my hair like this. So that was to remind me of that's my calling. And then down in the right-hand corner are words that are very precious to me, that Ray Hughes said to me. He said, you write very like me. And that was such an encouragement to me that it's just very precious to me. So I put that on my cover. And is that the last one, Sharon? Oh, this one. Yeah, that should be the last one. That depicts a time of worship where I was sitting on my couch and I had an open vision. And I saw these big God particles coming into the room, and I saw these little God particles coming out of me, or me particles, I guess if you want to call it that. And they merged together in the middle of the room, and my eyes were open and I saw it. And God gave me the understanding that there's no demarcation between where I begin and you end. So we are merged. We are, and if I could just remember that, you know, more often, it would be helpful. But that's the visual to depict that. So anyway, that's kind of the things. So you can really do anything, Desiree, that you want to do. I just happen to do watercolor. Analogs, that was an analog.
I enjoyed it tremendously. Thank you. And Ray Hughes telling you that just blows my mind. I'm like, yay, right, Victoria, right.
Yeah, I had him as a speaker for a conference, so I wrote some things for him in introduction, some funny stories and stuff. That one was about a biscuit, and so he asked me for him afterwards, and I've kept in touch with him, and you know, I do have a relationship with him, so I love that man.
I love reading and listening to anything he says. I don't do it enough, but I was just doing that a couple days ago. I'm like, oh, I love him.
Yeah, me too. So, well, anybody else that hasn't said anything, would you like to say something or share something? Any questions?
Well, Victoria, this is Irene Anderson. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of that. I loved watching how you painted and depicted your experiences with the Lord and stuff. Something I would love to do, but I'm not brave enough yet to not have it be perfect.
But nobody
So,
has to see it, Irene. I just chose to show you. So no one has to see it, only you.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Sometimes it's a little scary for me because when I get into it, God is so close when I do any art or creative things at all. God is so close. My husband just came in. That it's overwhelming. I get this emotion that comes up from my belly, literally, that just overwhelms me with touching God in that creative way and being with him in that way. So I love seeing that process and your writing and everything else that you put forth. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for just being so open and vulnerable with us and showing us all your stuff.
Well, thank you.
You bet.
One thing that I feel like I generally don't, whether I'm intimidated or not, I put it out there because I feel like as creatives or as people in general, as leaders, we're all leaders. People need to see that stuff. And I've had many people say that they were encouraged by my Facebook posts, you know, they're not perfect. You know, when I put a piece of art out there or whatever, especially like in the beginning, but the people that have seen the process, like I do it anyway. I just make myself do it because it's beneficial. Like we were talking about, like John's quote, you know, it's all about other people. It's not just about me. It's about encouraging other people that especially people that have known me for a long time, if Victoria Blodgett can do that, what can I do? And that's what they tell me. So I've had probably 7 people at least say that to me, that you have inspired me to do thus and such just by watching your process. And I think we all, I won't use the word responsibility, but we all have the opportunity to be that for others and just to overcome our own intimidation. You know, that's just one of the things that goes along with what Carolyn was talking about last week. That I feel like that's the other crucial piece, is saying yes, but then going beyond that to be vulnerable so that other people can be encouraged. That's my little preach for the day.
Thank you, Victoria.
Yeah. Hey, do you have a belief book, David? And what does it look like?
I have a belief book that I started when we first started belief books, and I'm absolutely hopeless to going back to it. I've got so many books and journals and bits of paper and stuff all over my place that I just never seem to continue with one thing. But that's all right. That's a little bit of who I am. But
Yeah.
My beliefs have certainly grown and expanded, and probably because of the ritual that I keep, and I've been encouraged to keep by Lynn and the people in this group. So, you know, that's changed things, and there have always been rituals in my life with skills and things that I teach myself, develop, and sometimes, well, a lot of time pass on to clients for their projects and things like that. So I can look back and say, yes, my beliefs are changing, and the impossible is becoming possible. And that's, I think, the biggest thing for me is, and the things in the spiritual that I believed were beyond reach are coming into reach. There's possibilities that I can imagine there now that I couldn't imagine before. So that's pretty cool. And you know, that's where the supernatural starts to move in this world. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
encourage all of you to keep pursuing your rituals, because that's what maybe drags us into the future impossibilities. So the
Is
other
there
thing
any,
I got to say is encourage Lynn that she has moved on, she's grown, how much so sometimes she needs to be reminded that, you know, she's come a long way.
oh yeah, yeah. Is there anything you'd feel to share about your rituals with us?
Not really. The biggest thing is just journaling, and usually my journaling is just writing. Sometimes it'll be a sketch, sometimes there'll be a picture that's described in words. I can draw and I can sketch. I have no interest in painting, but
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I move into that realm. But it's I create lots of other things too. So
Yes, you do.
often my work is my most creative endeavor. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
my clients think I can do the impossible, even if I don't believe it.
Yeah, my husband's kind of like that. It's kind of funny. They expect a lot of it, and you know, it's like there was a big joke at work that he had a God hand, that every time he touched something, it was working. And so it was like they weren't believers, but they would call him in whenever a machine wasn't working, and he got to the place where he would say, well, just let me touch it. Just let me touch it. And so they just called it his God hand. He never had to fix anything. He just touched it with his hand and it would start working. So that was a witness in and of itself, because later they, you know, they would ask him about it, ask him about faith and stuff. So, and he actually started a little prayer group, a 5-minute prayer group in the morning when the company was in trouble and they needed to make some sales. And as soon as they started this 5-minute prayer group with people who didn't even know the Lord, sales started happening and it saved the company. And it was like, it's just a whole, I mean, God is so, he can use us any way at all, you know? And I don't know why I told you that story, except clients definitely believe he can walk on water sometimes, but he gets his inspiration when he's sleeping too. And, you know, of course he asks God and prays about it, but anyway, that's the engineer. So I guess we're probably over time here. So anybody else wants to say anything before we head out? And I will just
Thank you for inspiring me to get busy on my belief book, Victoria. I love the first little, your imagination. One of my favorites was Pippi Longstockings.
oh yeah.
She was barefoot. Yours was barefoot.
Yeah. She's a little mischievous. I've always had a imagination. So Lord, I just thank you for everybody that was on this call today, and everybody that will watch it later. I thank you for this group. I thank you for Lynn. I thank you for that awesome testimony she had this week. Lord, as difficult as the situation was, you were so gracious, so glorified in that. It was so encouraging. I just praise you and thank you. And I just ask that you would bless everybody with that one thing, Lord, that you want them to concentrate on this week, that will launch them into a new place, that will be the yes, that's the bridge between here and the next wonderful piece of identity that we all can take on and become. And I just bless you in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Victoria.
Amen. And thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great week,
you.
guys.
Thank you,
Special. Thank
Victoria.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Same.
Sharon,
Thanks, Sharon. Yes, thank you.
Sharon.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
Desiree, Carolyn, and Joy
Bye,
Joy.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a fabulous weekend.
You
Yes,
too.
thanks be to
You too.
God.
Bye-bye.